Welcome to Clan Codex 2, which would be the Tremere. We are sitting here with Isaac, who is the player of Mr. Ambrose, and he will be talking about all things Tremere. First off, easy softball question. What is the best thing about playing a Tremere?
Well, there's a tie. There's actually two best things, so I'm going to cheat. The first one is actually reputation. Thaumaturgy is great, don't get me wrong, but the fact that everyone knows that Tremere have thaumaturgy, and by extension, no one knows what a Tremere is going to whip out of his toolbox at any given time. The Tremere have a reputation for being able to do anything and everything they want. Not even the laws of physics can constrain them. Now, that's an advantage for playing the game as a competition. In terms of just straight-out enjoyment, you will never lack for something. The Tremere are strictly hierarchical, and fortunately or unfortunately, that hierarchy doesn't stop at the player base. You have bosses and bosses of bosses and bosses of bosses of bosses all the way up to the top. So if you ever feel like you're lacking for something to do, when those times that there are a PC regent, you probably won't be lacking for something to do, unless the PC regent lacks imagination. But whenever you're lacking for something to do, if there's no PC regent, then fire an email off to the storytellers. The Tremere will always have something that they could ask that they're hoping to accomplish in any given city.
All right. What are some of the most interesting tropes, and what are some of the most boring ideas for character concepts if someone is thinking about making a Tremere player character?
I think the boring, overdone trope is going to have to be the child of the Tremere, the pyramid fanatic, someone who was raised from birth to be the ideal sorcerer, servant. Sure, that's how the Tremere embraced hundreds of years ago, but that doesn't make for a Tremere that goes very far. The most successful Tremere are not locked in a room with a stack of occult books from birth and expected to memorize the works of Crowley and John Dee. Occultism pushes the envelope, no matter what field it's in. I think that too often we get someone in the city who is sent from Vienna to be the master sorcerer or archivist, someone who spends all of his time in books and not talking to people, which is going to lead and segue nicely into something that I would like to see and more concepts. I think that the Tremere understand magic, fantastic. Magic is an incredible source of power, but it is by no means infallible. Only the reputation is infallible. So someone who makes magic by arranging circumstances. One of my favorite concepts that I've seen in any of the White Wolf publications is actually going to be the Union Leader from the revised Tremere Clan book. And he was by no means classically educated. He didn't spend all of his time in books. He wasn't obsessed with Crowley. He was a longshoreman who managed to align an entire organization, in this case the Longshoremen's Union, behind his own goals. He bent his own goals just enough and bent the goals of the Union to such a degree that they were synonymous. So he had the power of, and I don't know if any of you have ever actually worked in a union, but the unions are a scary political machine. And that's how he worked his way up to the top. He started life hauling boxes and played the game to the degree that no one could really ignore what he wanted because he had friends in all the right places, and that was his magic. Never accomplished a damn thing with a single dot of thumb. He just had the biggest Rolodex and knew how to stare somebody down.
What are some disciplines that a budding Tremere player should key in on, and what should they sort of wait until they have a couple more XP to spend?
I'm a big fan of spreading out, of being a generalist, because they've all got uses. You can't really talk about the Tremere without talking about thaumaturgy, so we'll start with that. Thaumaturgy is arguably the most versatile discipline in the game. Given enough time and study, there is a path or a ritual out there that will probably accomplish damn near anything you want it to. With a couple of caveats. One, it's expensive. Every single time you make use of a thaumaturgy path, it costs you blood. Every single time that you make use of a ritual, it costs you time. So you're not going to find many rituals that are useful in the middle of play unless you're willing to step out for anywhere between 5 minutes and half an hour. However, thaumaturgy, you definitely want to pick it up. It's the reason that the Tremere are still around. It gave them an edge over the other clans that they couldn't match. One of the more unconventional uses I've seen for thaumaturgy is actually going to be the second dot of Path of Blood, just as an example, because there's no way we have enough time to talk about it all. There was a character that was under attack in Elysium. He was being mystically attacked by something, and a Tremere walked up to him, and rather than using, I think it's called Blood Rage, the second dot of Tremere, Path of Blood, which allows you to spend blood for somebody. Generally, it's assumed that this is an offensive power. You touch someone, you drain away a lot of their blood, and you usually force a frenzy roll because that's an awful lot of blood to go through your system all at once. But this Tremere walked up to the guy who was under attack, and he was suffering lesions and bruising, and touched him and healed it all instantaneously. So always be on the lookout for unconventional situations that you can use thaumaturgy in. Rituals. One of my favorite uses of a ritual is going to have to be Defense of the Sacred Haven, which is the trick that lets you keep sunlight out of a room or a house, just so long as you seal all of the windows and doors, etc. There was a Tremere who was under attack in his haven. The Sabbat was rushing the hallway, and the great thing about this particular ritual, or like indeed any ritual, is going to be the fact that you can dismiss it at any time. So the Tremere in question had set up a hallway with skylights that led to his actual haven, and the only thing keeping the sun out of that hallway was this ritual, which he then dismissed when they were halfway through it. The sun came streaming through the skylights, and understandably the antagonists were reduced to ash, and the Tremere himself went back to sleep. Okay, so Auspex. Oh, I love Auspex. Auspex is far and away the most useful discipline. Not in that it does the most, but the fact that you will use it the most often. The thing about disciplines is that they have a definite effect on the world around them by their nature. Anyone can tell that you are using a discipline. If you flex presence, then everyone in the room is going to smile at you a little more. Dominate, the patsy is going to kneel and step and fetch your slippers. Potence, well, everybody knows about potence. But Auspex is entirely perceptual. It exists entirely in your own head. And all it does is give you more information about what's going on, which in a LARP, good golly Miss Molly, is information is king. Just being able to read an aura, or heck, just heightened senses. Just having heightened senses gives you danger senses whenever it's on. The storytellers will more often than not, especially in this game, they're real good about it, come up to you and give you a hunch. If ever you're stuck and you can't get orders from the hierarchy, go to the staff. Ask them, tell them you're trying to get inspiration, that you are flexing your Auspex to have a realization. More often than not, they'll throw you a bone. When you're stuck, Auspex is great for hunches, dreams, little spine-tingling sensations.